So one of the discoveries that we've made in working through this is that follow-up is a key step to do to make this successful. If we're going to be faithful to ask at all of our graduating students to give, advocate, pray, and serve, then we need to be faithful to follow up as well. While this might actually seem pretty simple and logical, this is actually a common place where the whole process can fall apart. And so it's going to be really important that we follow up regularly with our graduated students and our alumni. And so there are 6 keys to follow up. The first one is frequency. So we've learned that actually the longer you go between follow-ups, the more awkward the conversations become and the follow-up becomes. And the shorter time between follow-ups, the less awkward those conversations are. And so it's really important to schedule regular times of follow-up for your graduated students and your alumni. So if you've asked them to give, you want to follow up with them regularly and often. We recommend at least monthly. That seems like the sweet spot of it's not too much in between contacts, and it's not a ton of work for you. So you can do as often as weekly, but we want to do as at least monthly. And the only exception to that is if an alumni gives you an alternate timeline. So they say, hey, I can't right now, but follow up with me in 2 months and I'll be able to do that. You don't want to call them the next month or contact them the next month. You want to do the 2 months, which they asked for. So they give you a timeline, we follow that. Other than that, at the minimum, we do a monthly contact with them to follow up on giving, advocating, or serving. So the second thing is what we like to call mullet follow-up. And that means we do the business up front and we party in the back. So we do that with follow-up in the fact that when we are contacting one of our alumni to follow up with them about giving or advocating or serving, we get right to the point. And our point for contacting them is we are following up on a gift to give to InterVarsity. We're following up with their commitment to advocate or serve. We've all done the thing where we call and we catch up and we talk and we have a good time. And then at the end of the conversation, they say we need to go and you say, oh, but before you go, I really need to talk to you about this. And we actually don't have a real good conversation about their follow-up. And so we want to do that at the front end, do the business at the front end, and then after that's out of the way, you can talk about all sorts of other things, or you can even schedule another time to say, hey, I'd also really love to catch up. Could I call you next week and where we could talk more about how life is and how you're doing? So when you're doing follow-up, do business in the front, party in the back. Number 3 is always assume the best. A lot of times when I'm doing follow-up and people don't get back to me, my brain goes crazy places. I start to assume they hate me, they hate InterVarsity, they probably hate Jesus now. They just want nothing to do, even though they said they want to give, now they just hate everything and they don't want to give anymore. And usually the answer is that's not true. And so I need to assume the best. That keeps me from going into that crazy mode. It keeps me from getting angry with them if I assume they're just busy or they haven't made a decision yet. And that's why they haven't responded. That's why they're not answering. And so I need to assume the best. Assume that they're just really busy and that they haven't been able to do it yet. And that will keep me sane and help me engage them in an emotionally healthy way. The 4th is keep it casual. A lot of times we tend to like rehash the whole ask, or we write a long paragraph, or we do a whole long thing. We don't even need to do that. A lot of times when I'm following up by email or text, all I type is, hey, I'm following up on my previous text, or I'm following up on my previous email. we know, like when you have text with someone, the previous text is right above it, or the previous email is right below. And so they can see what you wrote before. They know why you're contacting them, and you can keep it really casual, and you don't have to be very formal. Now, there's some cases where you do need to be formal and you want to do that, but in general, you can keep it casual. That also helps you keep it short, and that makes your follow-up go really quick, and you can do a lot in a short amount of time. The fifth one is considering your mode of communication. And the key here is, what would you normally communicate with them with? When we're dealing with younger alumni, that might mean text, Instagram, Facebook Messenger, maybe email. How would you normally have communicated with them? You want to do that now. And so you don't have to pick up the phone and call everyone. Although there are some people, especially older alumni, but there are some even younger alumni that it is the most appropriate thing to call them. And others, you're doing other modes of communication. So pick the right mode of communication. And this can also help speed up your follow-up, so that you're not trying to be on the phone and leaving lots of voicemails, but maybe just sending a bunch of texts is the best way to do it. So think through, what is the normal mode of communication you would communicate with that person. You can follow up via that way. You can also vary that as well. After a bunch of times with no response, you can vary how you communicate. Finally, the sixth piece of follow-up advice is throw someone under the bus. I always tell people I'm coaching, as your coach, you can throw me under the bus. Most supervisors I talk to are happy to be thrown under the bus. And what I mean by that is, if it takes some of the shame out of it for you, if it saves face a little bit, you can say that someone else is pushing you to follow up. So you can say to a alumni that you're following up with, hey, my coach is making me do follow-up this week, so I wanted to follow up with everyone that was asked. Or my supervisor is asking me to close the loop on everyone who said they were interested in giving, so I'm following up with you to do that. Or I really need to get my numbers into my supervisor, so please, will you respond? That way, it's not just, it's less on you that you're the one choosing to do that, but it kind of defers some of that pressure away to someone else. And so I'm always happy to let people throw me under the bus as the reason why they're following up. So as you do these things, I believe that you'll find your follow-up will be more fluid, more efficient, more smooth and easier for you to do, as well as getting better responses. And so you definitely want to start thinking about following up with previous classes that have graduated from your campus, but also, though, as you want to add in the ones who graduate or are going to graduate soon into that mix. And so what we want to do now is give you some time to actually put this into practice. Think of 3 to 5 recent graduates who you can follow up with, and do some of this follow-up based on the 6 principles of follow-up we talked about right now. So let's talk about communicating with our alumni, because it's great if we can systematically get them in the fold, that giving, advocating, praying, and serving. But what we're after is lifelong partnership, and we need sustainable systems that keep our alumni engaged and communicated with. And so we're going to talk about alumni prayer letters. We think this is a key to long-term partnership, and especially through staff transitions. As staff come and go, it's really hard for our alumni partners to start receiving new personal prayer letters and new personal prayer letters. But we want to create a system that has sustainability and has consistency from staff transition to staff transition, over years of partnership that we're inviting our alumni to. So we need a system that works through transition, and that can last even without a permanent staff on campus that we may have in many places. So what we believe is best is having alumni-specific prayer letters. And a big reason for that is alumni actually are interested in hearing about different things than our personal MPD partners. And so our alumni care less about who the staff are and more about the impact on campus and more about what's happening on campus, about the students and other alumni as well. And so we want to communicate specifically to them, as well as we want to structure that can be consistent for them throughout staff transitions as well. So we're going to do alumni specific newsletters, and we want to send 3 of them a year. We believe the best times to send alumni specific prayer letters are in December with a year-end ask, in May with a year-end report, and in August, September, helping them pray well for NSO and encouraging them to engage in NSO. But in general, there are kind of 5 things that we want to include in our communication with alumni. So we want a brief report from a student. We believe that they want to hear from students. What is a student perspective? How are the students experiencing the work on campus and God on campus? And this will be really good to kind of remove the middleman or woman, you, the staff, from the scenario of the alumni are supporting to see students transformed, and the students are reporting how they are being transformed. So this is a good thing, and it's less content than you have to write, although I recommend you edit it to make sure that everything looks good. A second way is a report from you, from the staff. They do care about the staff. They do care about your perspective. And so we want them to hear from you and what your perspective is and what God's doing on campus. The third is hearing from other alumni. It can be really helpful for them to hear from other alumni, and exciting to see a name they recognize and what God is doing in the lives of alumni kind of post-college and how their time in InterVarsity shaped them going forward in college. We also want to include prayer needs. What are ways that they can pray for the ministry, and how can they pray for the ministry? And then finally, some sort of bigger picture thing, whether it's a regional story or announcement, a national story announcement like Urbana or regional conference or something like that, that gives a bigger picture of what's happening in the organization and the movement of InterVarsity. So these should all be brief. You don't need to write lots of content. And we're actually not going to do all 5 of these pieces in every prayer letter. So these are kind of spread out throughout the year between the 3. We want to make sure we hit them at least once throughout the year. And so we have templates available for you to use in MailChimp that kind of help you structure them, think through the year-end ask, think through a year-end report, and include sections of these things that we've talked about. I recommend you use MailChimp. It's a good system. It's free. It can help you track who opens, which is really helpful in thinking through your alumni engagement. But it's also a system that you can use that can outlast you. So creating a special alumni MailChimp account with a password that you can give to the next staff is going to be really helpful to manage the email list. You can download your list from the portal, throw all the emails that are on your alumni list on there, any other emails for alumni you have on there, and you can start to manage those email addresses. And it'll also be able to track who opens it, so you can see which of your older alumni that maybe you haven't had any contact with are opening and reading your alumni newsletters, and those are people you might want to follow up with as well. The other great thing about having a MailChimp specifically for your alumni is it allows a volunteer or an alumni volunteer to actually be involved in formatting and editing and sending those prayer letters for you. So this is a great place to recruit a volunteer who has those skills to say they can manage the alumni prayer letter schedule. They can ask you for the stories, they can edit the stories, they can import them into the templates and send them out and help manage that process. And that's way less work on you just to train an alumni volunteer or another volunteer locally to do that for you, and they can help manage that whole process for you. So again, if you want to as well, you can do more than 3 alumni prayer letters a year, but we think that's that's a good start. And you could do additional stuff through social media or other things like that. But we think this is a great place to involve other alumni and volunteers. And this is a key piece to long-term sustainable partnership, which we're looking for from our alumni.